everyone. Sorry, I'm outside today. I had to get away from the children. I'm a mother of three, so please forgive me. I hope the sound's okay. But anyway, I was introduced to a topic on my little What If I Had a TED Talk thing. And before I begin, I wanted to preface by asking or saying, as a child, the world is pretty easy to perceive because, as children, we watch. As children, we focus on what we see and the actions of others to teach us what we can expect from the world around us and really what we can expect from ourselves. I'm a millennial, born in the tail end of the 80s, raised in, the 90s, early 2000s. And at school, I was usually one of a few children of color. But still, I saw integration at stores, at places around the cities I lived in. I saw integration, people of all kinds, and even in my own neighborhood, integration. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Every week, about 3 days each week, I'd go to church and I'd notice I only saw Black faces, Black people. For all of my childhood church experience, that's what I witnessed. Well, it's mostly because my family and I went to Black churches. It was the only area in my life that I saw races were separated. The neighborhood of my childhood church consisted of all Black churches as well. Our church was called Second Baptist. Funny thing, across town, there was a church. It was filled with all white congregants, and it was called First Baptist. Man, as a child, I honestly wondered if they were first because they were white, and we were second because we were Black. Anyway, in another part of town, there were Hispanic churches, and in another, there were Asian churches, and all of these were separated. I found it odd, but yet almost normal. I figured, I guess we can eat together, go to school together, work together, but I suppose humans have to worship by color, by race, ethnicity, and separately. Well, this week, a friend of mine wanted me to talk about the Black experience within religious places. And I thought, hey, that's a great topic. It's rarely explored, so this could be interesting. Disclaimer, I am not here to be negative about churches, and I'm not gonna make some blanket statements that cover everybody's experiences. No, today I am here to talk about my experience. And I'm going to view this from purely a Christian perspective as well. Because, I'm a Christian. So that's the only perspective I really know. Now, of course, not all and not every Black person is religious. And there are many African Americans actually that believe Christianity in particular was forced upon us by white slave masters. And essentially those of us who have subscribed to Christianity today are hoodwinked and living blindly amid a white man's curse. In other words, we ain't woke, is what a lot of other African Americans believe. Then there are those like me that have actually had a very real, a very personal experience with God. And mine was in my living room of all places. And I became a believer in the Christian faith solely because of that, and not necessarily by my Christian upbringing. So anyway, I grew up in church. And like I said, the churches my family attended were mostly Black Baptist churches. Why? I don't know. I don't know the exact answer, but I assume it's because that's where my family felt most comfortable. At the time, there are a variety of reasons. Perhaps because you gotta think segregation was not that long ago. So maybe they attended Black churches out of some subconscious habit. Or maybe it's because our culture is acknowledged there in these church houses specifically, and they felt free to express themselves. It was there that they could listen to the music and enjoy the praise dancing and even the preaching style. Or maybe it was simply just because there was this essence of community. In a Black church, our history is explored. Our traditions are kept and honored, valued and respected. So anyway, when I grew up and came back to God, I attended my first majority white church. And it was different for me. Jaw-droppingly so. The music was so different. There were no choirs. There were different rules. I didn't have to hold up my finger while exiting, or I didn't have to pause my walking when there was prayer. And my white pastor wore these ripped jeans and just a really cool t-shirt instead of a robe. I thought it was awesome. But what I learned, as with many things in the Black experience, is that unfortunately, oftentimes, integration comes with a cost. Now, I've always have gotten along with my white brothers and sisters. I was raised in a predominantly white neighborhood, as I mentioned before, I think in the other video, and I have countless Caucasian friends. Seriously, I can't even count them. I seriously can't. But as I began to mature, I realized that to belong, I must sacrifice pieces of my culture to fit in, or to be accepted. There are things that are acceptable in the Black culture that are deemed unacceptable in the white culture. Sometimes it is as small and as simple as an afro. I'm sure you've heard, on the news, there are some students who have gotten into trouble for wearing one, or workers have been sent home, or it's hard to get an interview with one. Other times, it's just the passionate, usually loud, and straightforward way we often speak to one another. It can seem intimidating or even deemed rude. Or how we worship. It also is too loud. It's to some ears, and it can be repetitive. And how we agree with the pastor, go on, pastor, you better preach. Hallelujah, amen, throw a shoe. That can be seen as disruptive and annoying. And old Negro spirituals are, well, actually, I don't know why they aren't as cool as regular hymns. But anyway, and our events can be drawn out and loud again, and the purpose isn't always understood. So when I returned to church and realized these things were unacceptable, or for the benefit of the doubt, at least unpracticed, I made sacrifices. And I simply accepted these sacrifices. I didn't fully understand that I was giving up pieces of myself as well. I subdued and I pressed down my culture in exchange for others. For example, I got used to bands, and I switched from listening to, mostly gospel music at home to Christian contemporary. I went from Kirk Franklin and Fred Hammond to Mercy Me and Bethel. And it was super easy too, because especially on the radio, there's only one station that plays gospel music, and at least 4 to 5 that play Christian contemporary. Some of it is more edgy, like Skillet and Evanescence, and others are more, widely known as the Christian music, Chris Tomlin and Casting Crowds. But anyway, I literally saw my playlist turn from Black Christian music artists to white Christian music artists, all within half a year. I had lost touch with new gospel songs, but I knew new Hillsong songs before they even played on the radio. I was on that, man. So that same integration had occurred with even Christian speakers and preachers and teachers. I went from listening to Black pastors and Black teachers to listening to majority white speakers and white teachers. This was not because I was trying to. I wasn't trying to at all. I was simply living an average Christian lifestyle. Unfortunately, it's just that the average Christian lifestyle doesn't always include many Black leaders. But hey, I didn't notice. Not at first. As a Christian, I was too busy learning about the true nature and personhood of God and focusing on finding my purpose within Him and learning how to live as a Christian follower whose life is devoted to Him and ministry. Which of course is not a bad thing. Not at all. I mean, I didn't notice the differences consciously, and maybe, to be honest, maybe I shouldn't have. Yet, there are very real negative effects that start to happen, and subconsciously, those negative effects start to rear their little ugly faces. So, once I became a true follower in my 20s, I nearly immediately wanted to become a motivational speaker. I felt called to use my acting skills, my speaking to promote God. My next thought, though, following this very passionate desire was, well, wait, I'm Black. Could that even happen? So I scoured the internet, searching for Black speakers and specifically women Black speakers who were successful in the Christian arena. And I got all ready, and I got my pen and I got my paper, and I started to put a list together. And afterwards, I looked at my list, and of course, it's countable. You see, when you can count something, it's usually because there's not a lot of it. I mean, for example, I can count the bills in my pocket, but I can't count Bezos's, the owner of Amazon. Yeah. So my eyes were beginning to open. Then as I began to go to school and I began to work at this startup church, I'd ask and I'd dreamcast, like, can we start a choir? Or why aren't there any choirs? The answers were either, oh, we tried that, or, well, we don't do that. We do worship teams. Well, I mean, man, in my childhood churches, like the Black churches, we would have praise teams, men's choir, women's choir, both of them choir, children's choir, sometimes even youth choir that separated at a certain age. And every single one of these had opportunities to sing and serve, all within a month. So again, I didn't understand the hesitation or the lack thereof, or, well, why there wasn't any really trying. Now, many Black people and Black churches love expressing worship, not only through music, but also through dance and the arts. So my childhood church not only had the choirs and the praise teams I listed above, but they also had, throw this in, praise dancers, children praise dancers, mime dancers, skit people, monologue speech presenters, ushers who were adults and minors. Again, most of these things people could serve within a month. Others, we could serve a few times a year, and there was those occasional ones that were more annual, like Christmas. Plus, on top of that, all of our teams and all of our variety would get together with other Black churches' teams and in all their varieties. And we'd all be in the same neighborhood. And we'd have this huge festival of like worship. And we do so all as one entity. Though, of course, there'd be a little competition. I mean, we're human. We gotta represent our church. But anyway, there was still a strong sense of big C community. And in the majority of white churches, it was a little different. For example, I remember my first church that I went to, that I attended as an adult, I really, really, really wanted to incorporate this massive homeless ministry that would work and reach the entire city. And I was told, well, we can only do that in our territory, or else we'd be stepping on other churches' territories. Wait, what? I mean, I was dumbfounded. I was like so confused. So are our local churches gangs now? Do we like own a block, and if someone dares to minister in our neighborhood, we like jump them or something? Like what? It wasn't only that church either, but many had this like unspoken rule of separation. And it's like, for example, it was weird because they can get together at like state or district gatherings, but I haven't seen many that get together in their local communities and with their local Christian homies. You know what I mean? Like, even when they are the same denomination. And it seemed to me that these churches didn't like to like work together and didn't like to mix with one another. And I found that odd. But later, I also found out that much of it comes from this fear, perhaps, of losing people and or losing members to another church. But this is not necessarily a white community thing. I mean, I think the whole church, appears to have this problem, the whole Big C church. But still, based on my own experience, I was so confused. See, the churches I grew up in, especially in Vegas, were literally together. Like 10 to 20 churches all in one single city block, all bunched up together. So, I mean, even then, I did find it strange that we couldn't all just be one huge church. Like I said, it's a Christian problem. But still, at least we came together often as one Big C. And it wasn't until recently that these and other differences were starting to be unveiled in my eyes. I look up, for example, I have looked up Christian resources, and not to my surprise, mostly there's a sea of just white perspectives. And I started to question, like, well, I mean, what's going on? Like, for example, why is gospel separated from Christian and contemporary? Why can't they play on the same radio station? Why can't Black and whites and Hispanic people and Asian people, why can't these churches worship together in one service, incorporating all our cultures within it? I mean, I don't know why. What I do know is that it is possible. Here's the thing, when especially Christians are willing, and when we are aligned with God's will and plan for our lives, anything is possible. Because it says that in the Bible. So, guys, as a Black Christian, my experience in Christian churches, I just want to say it hasn't been horrible. It really hasn't. I'd be lying if I told you it were. I mean, I have learned and I have grown in each of my church experiences, and there are far more positive aspects about all of them than there are negatives. I mean, or else I wouldn't still be associating with churches or working in one or wanting to continue to work in one. Churches are amazing, filled with beautiful, beautiful people of all colors. Still, I do think that the unacknowledged segregation of churches in 2020 is a problem, point blank and period. The church shouldn't be behind in these things. It should be leading morality, leading righteousness, leading what we should do, being models and examples. And somehow we can come together. I believe it. I mean, I've seen it in a few churches, so I know it's possible. It will take humility, and it does take humility. And it takes compromise and even creativity, but it can become the norm. And to be honest, it really, really, really should. Only then a Black experience, a white experience, a Hispanic experience, an Asian experience can just give way to simply an experience where all can integrate without drastic sacrifices, and we can become one people, bustling with diversity and variety, and while worshiping God. I mean, it would be fantastic. So look, the Black experience in Christian churches is different. It's not always bad. It's hardly ever bad, but it is different. And I think ignoring that would be a disservice to the church. as well as ignoring other minority segregations through worship. Fixing this is simple. It doesn't require anything more than a smidgen of humility from each and every single type of church. Black churches and white churches and Hispanic churches and Asian churches and Native American churches and all of them, should humbly find ourselves in the middle of commonality. I mean, it could be exciting to find ways to do this and to see the kind of church experience that results from it. I mean, dude, I bet it would be epic. I mean, think about it. Like, really think about it. You take a whole bunch of God's kids in all their glorious diversity and have them worship together? I mean, seriously, why wouldn't he show up? I bet he would show out too. Change is possible, but it's only inevitable when we work on it. So, yeah. But God bless you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And if you have a topic that you want me to talk about, any subjects or ideas, holla at your girl. But in the meantime, have a very good week. I'll see you guys later.